Well, look at that. Hello. There's a Jessica Smetana, and there's a Spencer Hall. And together, we are the only F1 podcast you really need to worry about. That would be DNF. Jessica, I see you resplendent in papaya orange. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. And that's a very bold way to restart our first podcast in like 6 months, Spencer. I was
Mm-hmm.
gonna be like, oh, we might be rusty. Bear with us. We just spent the whole weekend at the racetrack. But no, you're right. This is gonna be great. And I know it's gonna be great because right now I'm wearing a Lando Norris hoodie because Lando Norris won the Miami Grand Prix.
See, I think we can go ahead. We were going to come back today. We'd already predetermined that. We did not base this on we will come back when someone new wins,
No,
or
because
we are on
we would have been back after Australia if that happened.
correct, correct. Although this is a little different, and we're going to talk about that. So, yes, first, some necessary housekeeping. Hi, this is a Formula One podcast, and we are back on regular schedule recording every week after the races. Note after the races. When Formula One goes on vacation, guess what? We too are continental and swanky. We too go on vacation at the same time because when you are a global tour, you got to pace yourself. And that is exactly what we are doing. Jessica, did I miss any other necessary housekeeping notes for the people watching, listening, and appreciating?
No, but I'm really excited that we're back. There has been so much news in the world of Formula One over the last, I guess, 6 months. I can't even really remember the last time I talked to you, Spencer, over the interwebs, because we did get to hang out all weekend and talked quite a bit. But it's been a really busy Formula One season so far. And I can't think of a better opportunity to restart this than after the first race of three in the United States this year, which was the Miami Grand Prix. Ended up being one of the definitely the most exciting Miami Grand Prix yet of the three. And also, I think the most interesting race of the season so far. So we have a lot of news to talk about. We have a lot of race recapping to do. We just have so much. We have so much to catch up on.
We do. Let's start with Miami, because one, Miami traditions. When you go to the Miami GP, though we are on our third, one, you're going to catch a cold. I don't know what it is. Miami is full of life, and sometimes it crawls into your lungs, and that is currently what I am dealing with. I don't know about you. You may have locals immunity at this point, so congratulations.
I may have given you the cold because everyone in the office had the sniffles here last week. So that's definitely our bad. What's number two?
Number two is this increasing numbers of overtakes and drama. After I got on numerous broadcast platforms and said we would have nothing interesting happen in this race because Miami does not feature a lot of overtaking. Idiot, moron, fool, a rube am I? Because we had tons of overtakes here. Not just, by the way, in the sprint race, where yes, DNF favorite Yuki Tsunoda did get an overtake in a sprint race, got the elbows out and got a spot. Part of a superb weekend for Yuki Tsunoda, who is having, I think, as good a year as could be expected, plus some. We had tons of drama, and we had, for the first time, we had a different winner under fair racing circumstances. I say under fair because we have had a win this year that went to somebody other than Max Verstappen in Australia due to a mechanical failure. This, however, there were a couple of wrinkles, but honestly, throughout, the best car on the track was not a Red Bull.
Yeah, it was a shocking turn of events. We all knew that McLaren was bringing in a new upgrade package into this race that Lando Norris had in full on his car. I still didn't think that they would be faster than the Red Bull and have a quicker pace throughout most of the race. But before we get to that, Spencer, we do need to mention a third thing about the Miami Grand Prix, which is that sometimes a thing will go viral about an event that you're at that
Mm-hmm.
people will be upset at, and you need to set the record straight. And so right now, I'm not doing this as a representative of the Miami Grand Prix, but I did see one of the things that broke contain out of the F1 world was this
Mm-hmm.
menu of Hard Rock Bites, which had listed a $280 Maine lobster roll, a $170 yellowfin tuna poke bowl, and chilled prawns for $290, et cetera, et cetera. I can confirm that those prices were for a large quantity of food that was meant to serve like 6 to 8 people. So that went viral. And if you know anything about the Miami Grand Prix, it might be the screenshot of those absurd prices. And don't get me wrong, they're still very absurd, but
Right.
it wasn't a single serving of yellowfin tuna poke for $170. So that's all you saw from this weekend. I'm sorry you were misinformed by Darren Ravel's Instagram account.
Yes, again, always double check your sources if it's Darren Ravel. The we did a little bit of field research on this because we went to the shawarma joint.
We did.
We did.
We
After
investigated all of the food options.
we did. I'm sorry about that. Nothing looked good.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely nothing
I
looked good.
do, not to name drop, but Bodega is one of my favorite. Like, I'm in a pinch and I need a decent taco options. But I think everyone in Miami associates Bodega with that because the line outside of Bodega looked like it was probably 45 minutes long. But yeah, we ended up getting kebabs and they were delicious.
Because we're honest media members and we
I think
don't
for
just
like
mooch the
$8.
food that they offer at the media center. There was plenty of that though.
Yeah.
Um, it's superb and it's mostly free. So, but shawarma, $27. It was like $27 for a pile of shawarma, which on the sports inflation chart, I would put somewhere above the NFL, right? And below the PGA. That's pretty much. So you go, oh, well, that's still pricey. Yeah, it's still pricey. It's F1. It's always at a premium, especially in Miami.
$27 for two kebabs in any context is insane. You're absolutely right. As far as like stadium concessions go, it felt like, yeah, this is kind of what you expect. But like you mentioned, we were both there investigating the media areas as well. We both were there. You were there with ESPN. I was there obviously on behalf of Meadowlark, and we got to experience all the other free food as well. And I was delighted. I loved the setup this year. Everything felt really easy and accessible. I think um, the track itself, like it proved that it's possible to have a really good and exciting race there, which I wasn't 100% sure about prior to this year, having seen the last two Miami Grand Prix. But I
Hmm.
think the venue like really looked good this year. And my only complaint about the race as a spectator slash like media member was getting to and from it in the traffic. Horrendous, the worst, just appalling, terrible, bad. Just I hate it so much. But otherwise, like it's a really nice place to watch a Formula One race.
The race itself appears to be in a rhythm. I think after 3 years, they've got an idea of how to do things and what they need to do. The track itself was in great shape. I know everybody was terrified about what the surface would do to the tires, and everybody was worried about that. That went from being a pre-race storyline to a non-factor during the race. We didn't hear much about grip. We didn't hear much about the surface eating tires. That was a fear before the race that never really materialized. Everything that this race worries about now, um, it comes from Miami. Miami is logistically a difficult place to move around because the places people stay and the places where people race and the places where people live and work are all in three different spots. So you kind of have to continually triangulate yourself. I say this as somebody, it took me an hour and 15 minutes to get from Hallandale Beach to the airport today. So I may be kind of sore about that. But the race itself, that machine's humming at this point.
Yeah, it was like the sprint format too. I understand. So I'm like I understand both sides of the sprint debate. It's not my favorite as someone watching at home, but as someone attending the races, which is I think who they make the sprint format for, I get it because there's so much more action Friday and Saturday when you have a sprint race. So this was the first time they did the sprint race in Miami. And I thought it was pretty good. It was exciting. It definitely didn't hold a candle to the actual race itself. But you have a lot more to see and to do when you have a sprint weekend. And of course, on top of that, the F1 Drivers Academy was racing this weekend in Miami. So that was exciting too. We were able to watch a lot of that. So there was a lot of good racing to be had. So we've already mentioned that Lando won, of course. It's his first win in Formula One. He's been on the podium 15 times prior to winning. He's
Yeah.
raced in, I think, 109 races before this weekend. So this was his 110th race without getting a win. Coming into
Hmm.
Formula One, he was obviously a very like highly touted driver. He'd been part of McLaren for a long time. He was a tremendous karter. Uh, he is someone that a lot of fans, a lot of Formula One people expected would win a race sooner rather than later. And so it's finally happened. McLaren has finally given him a car that he's able to do it in. So my perspective of it is holy shit, that rules. Does yours differ?
It doesn't really, because I think one of the best things about sports is the payoff after a long streak. Whenever a streak is broken, and this felt like a streak. I know Australia happened, and I know that people would say technically that, yeah, this isn't breaking Max Verstappen's streak, but this is the first one where it felt like somebody outraced him, and it felt like there was a car that was faster. And I know that there are pit circumstances and strategy that played into this, but if you do the math, Lando Norris's car is neck and neck with Max Verstappen's and would have been ahead had they just been running in, like straight laps, pound for pound, inch for inch. That's astonishing. That's everything the sport needs. And you had the confluence of a couple of different factors, the real breaking of like the competitive racing streak. And then in addition to that, you had really interesting racing down the line. I don't think anybody anticipated that at Miami when 3 years ago, after watching the first results from actual live action on the track. That's totally different. The number of overtakes keeps going up. You get now, I think I read that the competitive balance in the sport between Lewis Hamilton, who I believe finished sixth, all right, and the first spot was 17 seconds. That's nothing but good for F1, because that means that we have a lot of brawling up at the top as opposed to having to follow Crofty all the way down to the 14th and 15th spots, right? In order to get something interesting. Not that there isn't interesting stuff happening down there, because there was some stuff that almost had a direct impact on the race, and we can talk about that as well. But I love seeing that payoff. I love seeing a young person, a kid, uh somebody as young as Lando Norris getting to experience that for the first time. Though a lot of this, the Lando, you finally did it. He was like, oh, I wasn't surprised. There's like Lando's like, don't take that pity angle on me,
Yeah.
right? Don't be
Well,
like,
I
oh,
think
good job, buddy. No, I mean, he thinks he's that guy, and he proved it this weekend.
he's gotten a lot of shit from fans, especially for not winning a race, which is like really hard to do. Like even having a seat in Formula One is hard to do. On top of that, being at a team where you actually can win a race. And he's come close several times, and one thing or another has happened and he hasn't been able to pull it off. So to be able to finally do it and just be like, I don't, haters can screw off or whatever. That's
Yeah.
not what I immediately was thinking, but I made it PG. I think he's probably feeling a lot of relief right now. And I think probably the people that were making fun of him are like, well, it's all just because of the safety car, because the safety car was, you were out ahead of it. And so you were able to pit and get the cheap pit stop and blah, blah, blah. But like you said, the car was fast. He was putting in fastest lap. And the strategy is not like oh, we accidentally stayed out too long and there happened to be a safety car. No, that was McLaren's plan. And it might not have worked, but they strategized for that in case it happened. And it did happen. So that is just smart planning that pays off on McLaren's part, not so much like lucky roll of the dice for for Lando and McLaren. Is there a lot of luck that plays into it? Yeah, of course. Same with like winning a football game, but I
Mhm.
think you have to give them a lot of credit for having that scenario in play and being able to capitalize on it. And there was not a single person watching this race for the last 20, 15, 10 laps that was not like terrified something else was going to happen. Even McLaren was like, Oscar, please do not crash your car.
Do not get
Lando's in
into
the
it.
lead. Don't do it. And so everyone was holding their breath, hoping
Hmm.
that either Lando didn't make a mistake or someone else didn't make a mistake that would cause another safety car. But Lando had a perfect race from that point forward, did not make a single mistake. Max, on the other hand, hit a
A
traffic
bollard.
cone, a
Yeah.
bollard. I didn't know what those were called before yesterday. So I mean, you just have to give Lando a ton of credit for it, and it's hard to take away from what he was able to do yesterday.
Yeah, the only complaint I can have about Lando's finish is that it wasn't particularly competitive. He was 6 to 7 seconds ahead over the last 5 laps. what a twist that is to have that as a complaint where you say, oh yeah, my only real problem with the race is that Lando Norris was simply too far ahead of Max Verstappen.
Right.
That's unreal.
To state the
Absolutely unreal.
obvious, Spencer, like this is like the most obvious point in the world, but getting to watch the cars in person is
Hmm.
extremely cool. The sound that they make, the speed at which they fly by you, being able to actually judge the gaps between cars for yourself, like with your own eyes and not just seeing it
Hmm.
on TV, is something that is really, really incredible. And the last 10 or so laps, I was standing next to the McLaren garage. And so the gap kept getting longer and longer between when Max would come through, you would wait 5 seconds, or sorry, when Lando would come through, that's just force of habit. Lando would come
Hmm.
through, wait 5 seconds, Max would come through, and then the next time it was like a little bit longer, and then the next time it was like a little bit longer, and towards the end, I was like starting to count in my head. I was like 1,000, 1,000, and I obviously have the lap times in front of me, but it was like at one point like 6.5 seconds, and I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe this is
Hmm.
happening right now.
Getting waxed by a car that does not have the little prancing bull on the side. By the way, don't worry about making that mistake where you go, "Oh, I meant to say Max." Max did that when he sat down on the post-race couch. He sat he sat in the first place spot and it was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Here."
Wait, I'm not
Oh.
supposed to sit. There's like an order to this. I just thought I sit in the middle.
Yeah, no, I thought that was my spot, and a lot of
Max,
weeks it is.
he seemed so. One of the cool things was obviously during the lap after Lando won, he like all the drivers pulling up and clapping, like Lewis Hamilton
Hmm.
clapping for him, Max clapping for him. But afterwards, Max seemed so thrilled for Lando. And I know that they're friends and they've known each other since they were kids. Like that picture of them, obviously, uh, standing next to each other when they were, I want to say like 13, is iconic. And they both look like little kids because they are. But Max was genuinely like so happy for him, which I thought was really cool. He seemed way more into doing all the press after Lando won than any of the press he's done after his wins, especially
Hmm.
the sprint win on Saturday. So I thought that that was a fun angle of it, and all the drivers, of course, giving him his kudos just was cool to watch.
Yeah, he had kind of a shit happens look on his face, which is, I guess, when you know that you're still all in all likelihood going to win the title, you still have the best race team, and most days you will have the best car out there. I think you can have that kind of luxury. Also, winning three helps. It definitely helps settle the ego. It's not like how's this? It's not like after the race he didn't get to go on his iRacing rig and blow off some steam. That's remember what Max wants to do. He wants to get back to sim racing, and
One's a
he
good
did get
hobby for him.
it's a great hobby for him. He loves it so much. Like if you want to see real joy on Max Verstappen's face, doing it on an actual racetrack is not going to happen. Go watch his Twitch stream. That's where that's where you'll see him light up in a manner that you do not see very often. Also enjoyed everyone's general happiness about this. Fred Vassar of Ferrari was handed a McLaren hat and put it on backwards in celebration and was clapping along. Um,
We need to watch.
I
We need to watch this clip, Spencer, together
yeah.
of Fred Vassar. I think we have it. We can pull it up right now.
Yes. Fred just wanted to party too. And I
Pace
love
of
yeah,
the
there we
game
go.
is unbelievable.
Hmm. That's
Has
right.
there been like a better main character in F1 that's like emerged over the last like he's been in F1 forever, but he's had such a place of prominence now that he's on Ferrari that we see him all the time and he's everywhere. I watched him doing the um thing with Gunther on I think it was on Thursday with the Miami Dolphins players catching punts. And he just like seems like he's always goofing off and having a good time.
Yes. And has this kind of, I think I'm going to introduce you to word avuncular, which means
Yes,
literally like uncle-ish. Yeah,
yes.
he
A
is the
hundred
most
percent.
he's the most avuncular dude. He is everyone's F1 uncle. And if you doubt that, go watch more of the celebration footage because Fred was just as happy as everybody else, which I like that. I like that in this high pressure environment, you get a window of like 20 or 30 minutes where you can actually be cool with other people about their victories and their successes, and you don't have to act like I'm gonna go full Kobe. I'm gonna be in the gym at 3 a.m. I'm gonna be at the CAD board. I'm gonna be drafting up aerodynamics and new packages. No, I mean you're gonna be doing that anyway, so you might as well have some champagne.
Yeah, I really liked the. I know that this is probably a controversial opinion, but I really liked the Ferrari blue rebrand that they did for this
Hmm.
race. I think their mistake was overpromising because if they had just been like, "Hey, something slightly different will happen for this race," um, I think it would have been met with more enthusiasm. But a lot of fans thought their entire car was going to be blue, and then when they revealed the car and it had just like a little blue on the halo, a little blue in the
Mm-hmm.
front, a little blue logo, it was like, huh? But I loved the merch that they were selling. I loved the shirts, the collared shirts. I loved the race suits. Like it looked awesome. I loved the hats. And so yeah, that video of Fred Vasseur is going to be iconic forever, and we're always going to remember it was this race because he's weirdly in a powder blue for some reason.
The powder blue work shirt with the short sleeves really did make all of Ferrari's people look like mechanics.
Yeah.
Like it made them look like old school mechanics. And I don't mean like F1 mechanics. No, they didn't look like they were working on spaceships. These guys looked like they were about to work on like a 1987 Ford Ranger.
I loved it. I really did
Yeah.
love it. And Ferrari had a pretty good day. So like sad slash bad timing slash bad luck for Carlos because I think
Hmm.
he was the last driver to pit before the safety car.
Yes.
And if he had stayed out for maybe another lap, he would have been maybe would have won the race. Maybe would have at least finished on the podium. Charles, of course, finished in third place, so he had a very good race. But Ferrari's doing very well this season. Carlos obviously won in Australia, like we mentioned, and they're consistently the second fastest car up until this point on the track and have been making fewer of the signature Ferrari mistakes that we've come to enjoy. So, what do you make of the weekend Ferrari had on the track?
That we're continuing to see Carlos Sainz thriving despite losing his seat,
His job.
losing his job, that he's taking audition season very, very seriously. And somewhat counterintuitively, that means that Ferrari is going to be stronger for it. That's it. Like that now that Carlos has nothing to lose and is auditioning for a job, he seems to be as good a teammate or better than he's been in his entire time at Ferrari. I don't say that to mean that Carlos has been on some diva business. I don't say that to mean that Carlos is, I don't know, like Alpine actively tried to crash his teammate. No, that's not the kind of competition they have. What I mean is that Carlos has been more consistent, and that consistency is like really buoyed Ferrari overall. And Ferrari, who it's been a minute, we haven't had any hiccups. We haven't had any operational stuttering. We haven't had any stumbles. We haven't had to say, why did you bring a banana instead of a tire jack to the pit stop? Right? That's been other teams. It has not been Ferrari. So Carlos is really just kind of all of a piece right now. And I like that for him because I do think he deserves a seat. I do hope he gets another seat for next year. He's just too talented and there's still too much potential there. Like, I don't, if we're being frank, when you talk to people and you go, well, what do you think of Carlos? They all love Carlos. They all think he's an asset to a team. I don't think anybody thinks that he is, a championship driver, one of the top two or three in the sport. But if you take that back down to like top eight or top nine, he's definitely there. And a guy who, as a number two driver, is going to be the guy who ensures the floor for your team in any given race is not going to be too low.
Yeah, I think he's an incredible driver, a very solid driver, and someone who has an immense knowledge of all of the components that go into being a good driver, not just the actual physical driving itself. Like he really understands strategy and he understands all of the other pieces that go into it. Honestly, maybe that's why Ferrari is replacing him because they're like, "Uh-oh, he found us out." But just kidding. Like you said, there's going to be a lot of changes at Ferrari next year. Um, One of the rumors this weekend, of course, after the Adrian Newey is leaving Red Bull news was confirmed, was that perhaps he will end up at Ferrari and design or be part of the design of the car that Lewis Hamilton will be driving. We never even really discussed the Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari news because it happened during our hiatus here. But uh,
Mhm.
the way that all of this has shaken out over the last few months is really interesting because there has just been such a reshuffling of everything, of every team. And there was even news this weekend that Nico Hulkenberg would be going next year to Sauber, which is stake right now, and then will be Audi, which is just another confusing
Let's
thing.
just skip steps. That's Audi. Let's
It's
just call him
Audi.
that. That's
We'll just call it
Audi.
we'll just call it Audi.
Yeah.
Um, So a lot of interesting stuff going on with the Newey news. We of course read his book last season on the show. So when the news that he was leaving Red Bull was announced, a lot of people were like, he's probably gonna, retire and sail around the world and do all these things. And I remembered that we had read his book, Spencer, and in my head I was like, I can't see him walking
Mm-mm.
away right now. I can't picture him leaving F1 at this point. He seems like he really wants to keep doing it. So, do you have any insight into what the next steps for Adrian Newey might be?
Well, I asked the only guy I know who's close to being in his position, Gunther Steiner, who I interviewed on air, and I was trying to be cool. I was trying to be real subtle and saying, I'm not asking for a prediction, but what I would like to ask you, person who might know, would he feel better taking an underdog gig where he was going to bring a team from the bottom to the middle or even top, or would he feel better with a gig with, I don't know, a certain team that might need help getting from good to great, right? An older team, one with money, one whose logo might be a horse. I don't know. And I was trying to be real subtle, and he goes, I think he would go for the like short-term retirement, like the short-term gig where he could make a lot of, make a big impact really quickly with a lot of good resources. So, I think he'll be wearing red next year. So Gunther was like, he's going to Ferrari.
Or
That
powder?
or powder blue, depending on the climb. In South Florida, Ferrari wears powder blue, or at least a little bit of powder blue when they're driving around. Uh, he thinks he's going to Ferrari. He knows a lot more than me. I'm going to go ahead and say Ferrari. Not that there isn't still a chance he could go somewhere else or it could fall through, but it makes a whole lot of sense. And he is not going to have to do the work to get them from the basement to the living room. He's starting on the second floor and working his way up to the rooftop when it comes to Ferrari.
For sure. I think another potentially appealing factor could be that there's a new regulation set in 2026. The Red Bull will be getting a new power unit. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe he is not sure how quickly that power unit will be like as good as the current power unit. And so there's a real opportunity there, not only to make Ferrari better, but also perhaps the competition will not be as lopsided as it has been the last 2 years.
Hmm.
So I think that is certainly if you were writing fanfic about F1, you would put Adrian Newey on the Ferrari team and pair him with Lewis Hamilton in the future. But it almost feels a little bit too good to be true, which is why if he joins Williams, I will be, you know what? I knew it all along.
That man is made of more obstinate, confident stuff than like any human being on the planet. By the way, James Valls very humorously when brought up when Newey said, well, I mean, of course, everyone talks to Adrian. And of course, we've talked to Adrian. But he said, our problems go much deeper than Adrian. So I imagine that's probably the first thing James Valls said is, dude, really? Really? Do you
So honest.
do
I
you
love
want
how
a piece of this?
yeah, right. Please, you don't want to. Come on, guy. You're 65. Like,
Yeah, buddy. Like, come on. I do want to segue to this. We mentioned Williams, Logan Sargent. We in year three we've abandoned the this is Logan Sargent's home track. I mean, that's kind of true. And it is an American circuit, but the results for Logan Sargent have gone from worst to worst. They've gone from bad to super bad. Logan Sargent getting involved in a what ended up being when you're told that you are key to the outcome of the race, you don't want it to be in the manner that Logan Sargent was. Is that correct?
yeah, I felt really bad because this truly was not his fault. Well, I don't think it was his fault. Do you agree it wasn't his fault? I guess some people may disagree, but I didn't think this was his fault, and so he DNF'd and of course swung the race towards the direction of Lando Norris. He's had a rough season in F1. There's been rumors about him losing his seat and about Williams promoting a development driver and all of these things. So it could not have gone worse for Logan Sargent this weekend. And yeah, it's just a huge bummer because that has to suck.
I don't know if he's going to make it out of the season. I think it's that bad.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that is. And there's a lot of buzz over, okay, well, who's looking at, who's when are we getting Andrea Kimi Antonelli up, who is the 17-year-old racing wunderkind that everybody's pretty sure will be up sooner rather than later, with Logan Sargent sitting there and being a non-performer. You say that it wasn't his fault, and I know that one of the things we want to discuss was, is Kevin Magnussen a supervillain now?
Yeah.
All right.
Mad Mag.
Uh, yeah, K
Mad
Mag
Mad
is the
Mag.
Mag. Yeah, is the Mag Man truly a madman on the track now? I think that crash was more his fault than anything else, but at the same time, Logan Sargent finds himself in those situations a lot.
That's true. Yeah, it is fair. Yeah, Kevin Magnussen had a weird weekend. He was like just I mean, he was trying to help out his teammate. I get it. He got so many penalties this weekend. It was absolutely bananas. I guess like where did this come from? Like why this weekend? What's going on?
I don't know. Like he's almost at the point. I don't know if you've played the F1 video game, but it feels like he's almost at the
Oh,
point where they're like, yeah, you need to go see the race stewards, buddy. You need to go have you need to go have a talk with the petroleum god about what you're doing out on the track. And I don't know if that's a matter of team dynamics, whether, Nico Hulkenberg performing better and more consistently has just put him in this spot where he's back there rattling his cage just to make noise. Um, yeah, it's bizarre because this is not, it doesn't feel like the same driver.
yeah, 65 seconds worth of penalty points over the weekend with 5 penalty points. Or yeah, 65 seconds worth of penalties to go with 5 penalty points. Wow. I got tongue twisted. But yeah, it was an interesting weekend. Speaking of Haas, any other insights from Gunther? I saw you talking to him for a while.
Yeah.
It seemed like you guys were having a great time. I unfortunately didn't get the intro. Maybe next time. But how did all of that go?
Yeah. He appeared out of nowhere and he instantly disappeared. Like I looked over and he was gone. Gunther is very intense.
Oh,
Gunther is very quick. Gunther is taller than I thought he was. Like Gunther is a full 6.5 feet tall, like 6 1/2, not 6 1/2. Not quite 6'1", but tall, very intense. Enjoying doing media, enjoying doing his career. We did not talk to him about the lawsuit because it turns out people don't like talking about those, particularly when they're ongoing and against people who are at the track that day. So we didn't talk about that, but I do think he's probably going to end up on he's going to end up on the player side again, not the observer side. He's a great observer. I think he could do that all day. I kind of wanted to hand him the mic and just walk off because I thought that would have been one,
we
funny,
just
and two,
camp forever.
he would have done a better job than me. Like ultimately you're like, oh, this guy's really good at this.
Got it.
We could
Yeah.
just walk off and I could go grab a drink. Yeah. But
I think he
no, he
wants to
was,
get back in the racing game. Like
yeah,
he's good at media, but he wants to be on a team.
yeah. I do like him talking about America is huge. It's very big.
That is true. Um, the lawsuit you mentioned, in case people aren't familiar, is regarding money that he is suing Haas over not paying him. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Gene, you owe me money.
I
Write
would
the
just
check.
work it over if I were Gene. But I mean, what do I know?
Uh,
Uh,
you know, if we're talking F1, and that is what we do here,
we
I
are.
do want to note Yuki Tsunoda points.
Yeah. Good weekend for you. I mean, good racing, good overtaking, just like
Mm-hmm.
all around solid weekend for Yuki. I know that uh you are going to feel the way that I felt yesterday when Yuki wins a race. So I think it was a step in the right direction for that one day happening.
Listen, listen. The day that happens, I will be crying on this broadcast for several days after because Yuki, it's coming. Whether when he eventually moves to a team that has an actual car, which I think is in the works. When we're talking about silly season, we've got a long time to talk about silly season. It's in terms of
It's the whole
shopping
season
season.
now because of Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton was like, I actually don't even really know how and why that announcement happened before the season, if it was meant to, but it really set the wheels in motion.
Yes. So with that, Yuki is one of those drivers who, when things start shuffling around, given his performance in a car that I think everyone agrees is, not as good as his finishes, he has been better for the second year running in a car that he outpaces by talent and by ability and manages to get at places where it probably doesn't belong. So P7 for Yuki, a superb as charter member of the Yuki Tsunoda fan club, Yuki Main, as CJ0 on Twitter is fond of calling him, performing really well.
Yeah, so I feel like probably a few things left we need to mention before we finish the show for the day. I feel like
Hmm.
it would be impossible not to mention the fact that Donald Trump was in the McLaren garage. Uh,
Yep.
and Formula One, from what I read, Formula One, he was there as a guest of Formula One, and a spectator, obviously. And they asked him where he wanted to go, and he said McLaren, and McLaren accepted. And so he was in the garage before the race and after the race. Oddly, perhaps curiously, McLaren's Formula One team has not posted any footage or clips of him on their social media channels. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I did a quick glance earlier and I was like, interesting. He, of course, met with Lando Norris, tweeted or not tweeted, whatever he does about it, and said that, he was Lando's lucky charm. So a lot of fans are really upset about that. Understandably, it is obviously hypocritical. You could say hypocritical at best of Formula One because they do not want their drivers to be political, guys. They do not want the drivers to be involved in politics, but they will have a presidential candidate and a former president come to one of the garages.
Once you start pulling the thread of potential of dealing with autocratic leaders in the F1 world, that sweater unravels very quickly, considering the partners, the countries, and some of the people involved in the sport and the degree of money required to even get started. So, yeah, personally, when you're there, you're just like, and this has happened at a couple of different sporting events. They're like, oh, yeah, he's right down the hall. You want to say, hey, you don't have to. No one has to say hi to anybody. You don't. You're like, he's there. Somebody, a colleague of mine was like, oh man, it's a shame that he came and ruined it. And I'm like, you know what? Like, you can't stop people from coming through the door, and somebody's going to let him in because somebody disagrees with you, and you just have to go, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm gonna do what I can, which is just be over here and ignore everything happening down here. I saw Kiki Palmer. That was where I was like, that was the person I was most excited to see this weekend.
You met
Somebody's like,
Kiki
"Did you
Palmer.
see Trump?" And I'm like, no, I saw Kiki Palmer,
You're
and I
highlighting my weekend.
saw Travis Kelsey, saw
I
Patrick
didn't get to see
Mahomes.
Travis. And interestingly, Taylor Swift was apparently supposed to be there, but she never showed. So I don't know what that was about. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. There is a lot of hypocrisy within Formula One. And of course, we haven't even discussed all of the things happening at Red Bull that are still kind of like ambiguously floating up in the air, may or may not have anything to do with Adrian Newey leaving, may or may not have anything to do with a potential Max Verstappen leave after this season. But I'm sure we'll discuss more on a later episode because we're running out of time. But yeah, that whole thing was so weird. Every time I was trying to walk to get a water, I would get stopped by security, and it made it a bit of a fiasco back there. But Formula One, who else do you think can afford $290 yellowfin tuna poke bowls?
Yeah, I would like to make a happy note that we can end on because there's
Please.
something we haven't done for a while because we have something to give out, something we haven't talked about. Yeah, yeah, because Mercedes had a
No,
pretty good
I know
day.
what it is. I know what it is. Okay, I'm ready.
That's right. And I want to end on a positive note. And it just so happens that they didn't play the Dutch national anthem. No, in a week, by the way, when all sorts of magnificent British things were happening, a lad became a man. Okay, he became a chap. He went from lad to bloke. That beat Lando Norris. Normally, an award given most often to George Russell, who, yes, is a very good lad. He was not the best lad this week. No. Pints all around, papaya orange hats on everybody. That's right. The lad of the week, the best lad, is Lando Norris. That's right. He did it. So yes.
I can't believe he did it, Spencer. I really can't.
Hey, listen, that's the best lad. The best lad is literally number one, Lando Norris. All you got to do to unlock your greatness, go get trashed in Holland. Just have an Amsterdam weekend, fall on your face.
Goes on glass.
The face is the reset button. It hits, and then you're just ready to unlock an entirely different level of performance.
Do we think he walked into a glass window or something? That's what it appears to have been.
Well, whatever the contact was, it was a reminder that being in your 20s is amazing. That you could hit your face after a weekend of hard partying. I don't know what kind of partying, but that you could
right back.
You could bash your face in one weekend, and the next weekend you could be the fastest man in motorsport.
Hey, and also Carlos Sainz won a race last year after an appendectomy. So if there is not a testament to your 20s indeed in Formula One, it seems like if some weird thing happens to you, maybe it'll be a good thing in the next weekend.
Yeah, change his karma, change his career. That is the man who is now a Formula One champion. If only for one weekend. That is more than most people get. So congratulations to Lando Norris and McLaren.
More than I could say.
And with that, you've been listening to DNF. We will be doing this after every Formula One race, not just Miami, but all of them. I am Spencer Hall. That is Jessica Spatana. On the ones and twos has been Douglas Reyes Cerrone. Thank you for joining us. And vroom.